Indian Pharma is growing at unprecedented rate now. The competition is increasing, skilled manpower shortage is evident, attritions are evident. The technology penetration is very low in core operations, and therefore a lot of key fundamentals are not in place. There is a clear and present need to leapfrog from paper to digital for every pharma company in India. FDA is now actively pushing industry to adopt newer and newer technologies and become paperless. Everyone in pharma need to appreciate the fact that pharma is not the only regulated industry. So more paper-based you are, more person dependent your processes are. Technology is not the option today. It is inevitable part of any business. Otherwise, they are going to become paper dinosaurs.
Today, we are in conversation with someone who's silently leading the most meaningful digital shift in Indian pharma industry. Prashant Mirajkar, better known as a tech entrepreneur, but a problem solver at heart. Someone who has seen how the pharma compliance burdens people and holds them back and decided to change it permanently. As a founder of Samichinam and visionary of its platform Samwed, he helped companies go from paper chaos to digital clarity. He has helped not just to improve regulatory compliance, but also to work smarter, grow faster, and have peace of mind on the production area. This episode is about the silent revolution, one that is making the headlines, but more importantly, bringing change in lives of QA, QC, and engineers at the plant. To talk about the silent revolution, we have with us Prashant Mirajkar. Welcome, Prashant.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
So let's start with the silent revolution. Please tell us how it is making a major milestone in the pharma industry today.
Sure. The revolution is being driven by all those N number of CEOs in their own companies, and Samwed is becoming the tool to make that revolution better, faster, and more meaningful. So I'll take example of our most favorite customer, Rubicon. So as any selection process begins for software, we also had to give multiple demos to multiple people. And once that was done, they made a final decision and they selected Samwed and Samichinam as their business partner to implement the software. So initial decision was to implement DMS and QMS. When I spoke to their corporate QA head, he said, considering his experience with many large companies he has worked with, he said that he would prefer to start with kappa, change control, and deviation. However, I insisted that we start with the entire QMS suite and just not these three processes. He said that's impossible. And I said, believe me, it's possible, and together we'll do it. And in 4 months, we completed implementation of DMS and QMS. And in his own words, we have beaten all the industry benchmarks. And that gave us immense confidence, as well as I'm sure to the Rubiconians, that this is the tool that they want to use to drive the revolution further.
Great. I would like to go back for a moment and try to understand what sparked your interest in pharma.
Okay, that's an interesting question. So I also manage another company where we provide services for design development of analytical instruments, hardware as well as software to various multinationals. And one of our principles was implementing a software in largest pharma company in India, and they sought our help. That was somewhere in 2017. And we provided services to them, which was about the laboratory management system in one of their plants. The CEO is very smart and very technology oriented, and he had certain business objectives from this implementation. So when we did that project, which went on for a considerable period of time, that provided me huge amount of insight in how these people think, what their approaches are, how the executions happen, what are the various limitations, etc. And then I concluded that in all these process in pharma companies, because later on I spoke to many people in the industry, and I realized that generally there is lack of end-to-end process thinking when they decide to deploy a software. And primary reason is that I think besides Samwed, there is no end-to-end platform available to the industry. Many people have modules on which they built another module, but there is no seamless platform as such. Second thing was that these companies do it based on the boundaries of the software, which are typically aligned with the department. So this doesn't span across the organization. So recently I had one workshop at one of the clients' place, and I asked the participants a question that give me example of one process which you think doesn't have impact on any other department in your company, and they fail to do that because that's the fact. Everything that we do in one department always affects some other department in the company, and therefore the company as a whole. And that's when I started thinking that this is an interesting problem to solve. We need to provide some solution to the pharma industry, especially Indian pharma industry, for whom some of the solutions which are available abroad are not affordable. And we started thinking about it. That's the genesis.
Coming back to the revolution again, what is the secret behind success of Samwed? Is it the product, people, or the implementation rigor?
Secret? There is no secret. But all of those plus something more has made the success apparent. And basic three aspects of that is common sense, lateral thinking, and theory of constraints. In pharma industry, there is an acronym called as QBD, quality by design. And that has been part of our ethos right from the beginning. That's how I've been taught by my mentors throughout my career. And when we decided to get into the design of Samwed, we said that we are going to consider the end-to-end spectrum of the processes in pharma industry. And we are not going to take module-wise approach, because I had seen what that approach has done, not only in pharma, but in other industries where I've worked. So for example, there is a concept called as continuous process verification. That concept is ingrained in Samwed. It doesn't come separate option. It is there because that is the basic necessity today. So instead of looking at one module or one functionality, we said that we'll look at the entire end-to-end spectrum. So it included document management, it included laboratory management, it included plant operations, therefore production, engineering and equipment care, system validation, training, quality assurance, everything. We didn't leave any aspect unconsidered. We consider each and everything. So when we started working on this, obvious choice was how to base the architecture on and what should be our architectural drivers. And we said that business process engine should be the fundamental thought process here rather than functional approach. And therefore, Samwed is now a business process engine, unlike majority of the software in the industry. So we look at the pharma requirements, operational as well as regulatory. And we said that seamless architecture will support both of these together. And most interesting example is that when we implement, say, DMS, then to implement QMS, we just give enhanced license and QMS becomes available to the customer. Unlike other software where they have to install something separate and ensure that those two pieces talk together. No, that doesn't happen in Samwed. It's seamless platform. Second thing that we did was try to find out what customer need rather than what they want. So for example, they want compliance, they want automation, they want APQR, but then they are part of some processes, and from CEO's perspective, What he wants is has his business to improve, his top line to improve, his bottom line to improve, and therefore various things that happen during the operations which need to improve to contribute to this. And the most important thing, and the last thing, is our value system. Our value system says that customer success comes first, revenues will follow. All these things together, I believe, have made Samwed what it is and helping our clients.
Despite spending money and efforts on software, why do you think pharma companies still struggle with paper as of today?
Very good question. First of all, everyone, especially everyone in pharma, need to appreciate the fact that pharma is not the only regulated industry. There are many other regulated industries like finance, telecom, automotive, oil and gas, and their quotient of implementation of technologies is much higher than pharma industry. So why pharma is hesitant in adopting technology as compared to other regulatory industries? One of the basic aspect is that there is a mindset that regulatory pressures make it difficult to adopt technology. But it's interesting to note that FDA is now actively pushing industry to adopt newer and newer technologies and become paperless. In fact, most of the regulators now expect digital responses from the companies rather than paper responses. Next part is that there is some lack of appreciation that documents are not data. Data can have multiple manifestations in multiple types of documents. However, in pharma industry, people tend to treat documents as data. Third thing is that all these paper systems over the years, plus the way softwares were available to pharma industry, the silos have built up and that mindset has become very firmer. So I can give multiple examples. So people just implement LIMS. But when we implement laboratory management in Samwed, it considers what's going to happen when other modules come in, and it also seamlessly integrates with the other modules that are already in place. Not only that, if there is something else other than Samwed available with the customer, we can integrate it with that software if that software allows the integration. Next point is that obviously to implement technologies, you need professional people in your organization. And because of all this history, pharma industry has not been very attractive to the top IT professionals. So professionals available to pharma industry in IT domain is not as qualified and of as good quality as in say finance industry. Also, because of the silo mentality, when the applications were installed, they took huge amount of time to implement and huge cost to implement. So first example I gave you, why the Genesis, there that company spent crores of rupees over the period of about 1.5 years, and they failed to achieve their business objective. They implemented part of that software, but CEO's business objective was not achieved. And knowing that these things have failed, I think CEOs are becoming less risk averse in making a decision and implementing something. And the part is that they don't have confidence that their people will be able to use the technology better, especially when there are so many technologies people are using, right from chaiwala to CEOs day in and day out. So they should be getting rid of that.
Then what's your software philosophy and how have you brought it to life in pharma companies? Can you give me some examples?
Sure. So I've been very fortunate and grateful to many people and organizations who gave me opportunity to experience different types of industries and a wide spectrum of technologies. With that experience, I realized that generalization and specialization can be used very effectively to design any system. So I'll give you an example. Basic operations in pharma industry are manufacturing operations. They are not much different than any other manufacturing company. What changes is some of the controls they have in place. What changes is the regulations that they have to cater to. So if I design a generalized system and ensure that all the specialization in terms of controls, in terms of compliance, in terms of business intelligence required, I think the system can be designed quite well. Very early on, we decided Samwed has to be business process engine and not functional software. And believe me, when we started thinking about this and terminology for business processes in software like tasks and procedures and parameters, we were not sure whether people, the end users, would be able to pick up that lingo. But I was surprised how quickly they picked up that lingo and started talking to us in those terms as well, because it's natural, because they perform tasks, they perform procedures, and they record the parameters. So it is exactly what they do there in daily life. Also, we looked at everything end to end, meaning I'll take example of document, right? So when document is printed in some way, it comes with a QR code, which can be used to reconcile the documents. So documents are issued to shop floor and they are brought back, and when QR code is scanned, they get entry saying that this document has been received completely. Okay. When we implemented equipment care module and feature called as smart logbooks, when they have to make entries for usage, cleaning and whatnot, then they just have to scan the QR code on the document and necessary data for that logbook entry automatically gets created. So the document started with the DMS implementation, but we ensured that its usage in other processes will also continue. Next one is appropriate level of innovation and deployment of technology helped us win the user's confidence in the system. So example is when we implemented equipment care, obviously a lot of equipment in the pharma operation is situated in various rooms, which are where the entrance is very regulated and operations need to happen there. In typical desktop based system, what would happen is people will have to go out. Keeping such desktops in those production rooms or production areas is absolutely impossible. So we ourselves came up with a concept called kiosk, which is an IP67 compliant device, meaning it can work in any pharma environment without any hitch. And so it's basically an Android based device. So we also have the same app running on the mobiles, and I tell you, my users are just happy with those apps. They prefer those more than the desktop based application. We also have implemented generative AI. The Samwed itself is non-generative AI platform. When the generative AI became available, we are now using it to analyze the QMS process. So during the reviews, the managers can figure out what are the lacunas in the process are, whether there are any discrepancies, whether there are any conflicts, and they can be handled then rather than discovering them later on. Exception handling is very, very important for any effective software. So typically every software is designed. In fact, when you go to users and ask for the requirements, they'll tell you what happens in typical scenario. But they tend to forget the scenarios where the errors occur or exceptions occur. And when that happens, system fail to provide the necessary value to the users. So we are conscious of this fact and we said that we'll handle exceptions all the time. Example is that suppose I am in R&D and I'm working on a molecule, so certain specifications are getting developed, certain STPs are getting developed, and obviously it's a company secret, so limited number of people need to have access to that information, unlike other documents which are released to QC. So we have concept of access control list. Using that, we can ensure only limited set of people can access that document. Once company is ready to commercialize the product, then access control can be removed and appropriate people based on their roles and rights can access the document. Another thing that we did was improving, and this is the conscious thought process. we believe if a system is not improving the standard of professional life of the user, then that system is useless. And we have ensured that Samwed would deliver that promise to our users. And best example in the words I can quote from this corporate QA head is, now with Samwed, night before audit, I can have a sound sleep. I think there is no greater appreciation of Samwed than that.
We often say that buying software is not transformation.
Correct.
What do you think are the common traps that the pharma companies fall into?
Virtually every pharma company which is more than 500 crore turnover has implemented one or the other ERP, right? But if you ask the CEO, what are the exact business benefits that you have achieved by implementing ERP, I'm sure very handful of them will be able to give a satisfactory answer to even themselves. Okay. Second aspect is that in most of the softwares that have been implemented in pharma is quote unquote paper on glass. So basically what they do is whatever is done on paper, exact same thing is done on the application, capturing the data, but then they have to rely on paper, they have to rely on emails, they have to rely on Excel to move the batch forward. So if that is the case, then just buying the software hasn't changed much rather than having more computers and more spend, right? So therefore, I believe that for the right digital transformation, you need to have a purpose-built, interconnected, context-aware software. So software should know what's happening. It should be built for that exact purpose, and it should be able to connect with various entities in the and systems in the organization to operate properly. Second thing is that even if somebody opts to develop the software in module-wise fashion, the basic thought process should be there so that the seamless architecture has to be there. Now, there is a concept called a digital twin, which means that you are simulating or emulating the exact same process and user behavior as it happens. So when we implement Samwed, being business process engine, we can configure it to user process. So when we do that, we ask them questions and create the context in such a way that the process gets optimized, simplified, and it emulates what is supposed to happen in the real operation. So users can relate it very easily and they can adapt the system very, very easily. So adaptability of the system by the users need to be verified early on. Next thing is the rapid configuration possible or not, and I can give you many examples which have contributed to the failures of implementation in pharma company. You buy LIMS spending crores of rupees in licenses. Once that is implemented, you then deploy huge teams within the organization spending another crores every year to maintain that software. So what is the business objective that you have achieved? Okay, compliance has been achieved, but at what cost? Paper would have been better as compared to that, right? Then we said that integration must be the first choice in our architectural decisions. So for transformation, the software should be able to integrate with equipment, instrument, and other software. For simple reason, on the paper, people look at the equipment, note down the value. People look at some other software, note down the value. But if the software can communicate with all those and capture that information automatically, then people can focus, the human beings can focus on what human beings are ought to do. Because there are certain things only humans can do, machines cannot do. So that's the only thing humans should be focusing on. So obviously that reduces burden on them. And the software should become a user-centric software. So for example, UI has to be such a way that it becomes intuitive to use. So for example, in Samwed, our UI has similar theme across the modules. So our first module is deployed, they don't have to learn any other UI because they know how to interact with the software. Not only that, Samwed has something great which is not available in any other software based on my 40 years of experience in the software industry. It guides the user how to execute their process, which is not possible in any other software. I haven't at least seen any software like that. So user can concentrate on what they have to do and respond to software questions or clues, and process moves forward without giving them any headache. And most important is my team, or for that matter, any software they buy, they need to ensure that the team who has provided the software can provide agile support and can become supplementary team to their IT. Because as I said,
Correct.
Pharma industry is failing to attract IT talent. So obviously the software provider can fulfill that gap. And I think in Samichinam we do that very well.
So where do you see the biggest disconnect between C-level vision, ambitions, and people on ground in the pharma companies?
Okay, that's again a very good question. Any forward-thinking CEO knows that software can be a powerful tool and catalyst to change the behavior of the people. So typically what happens is when the software is bought, this aspect is not considered. And therefore, people have to learn a lot of things, and their behavior then becomes how not to use the software rather than how to run their process, right? The second part is that they assess only the software, but not the leadership behind the software. Every CEO must demand top line and bottom line benefits that this software is going to bring in from his team as well as from the software vendor. They should expect similar point of view from their managers, because managers are typically operation oriented.
Correct.
They are not necessarily bothered with the top line and bottom line aspects of their actions or inactions. Therefore, the CEOs must educate or help their managers understand this software is a tool which is helping the business, and because it's going to help these managers in running their operations smoothly. Fifth point, and another important point, is that CEOs cannot do everything in the organization, obviously, so they have to delegate. But then they must be the part of governance very deeply. And sixth and final one is that every CEO must know what is the cost of ownership of software. And there are multiple factors here which I have seen not only in pharma but other industries also, people neglecting left, right and center and then frustrated about the decision. And in pharma, then they get stuck with the software also. So first part is licensing. And that is the only part on which typically the decision happens. Whoever has quoted the least license cost gets the order. But then people need to know that typically AMC is also some percentage of the licensing cost. Some people have variable licensing based on number of users, number of equipment and many other parameters. Unlike Samwed where it is site-based license, where today you are 100 people, you have paid 100 rupees, you become 1000 people, no change in licensing cost. So your licensing cost is very definitive. Third part of the cost is the implementation cost. And that is one which is neglected quite often. So I have given the purchase order, my CSV has happened, I have started implementing, and then implementation goes on and on and on and on, where the if I've invested 100 rupees buying that software and that implementation is not completed for 1 year, then the cost of finance on that 100% is the cost that you are bearing. If you get it in 2 months, that means your ROI is better. Besides that, after implementation, what is the staffing required to support the software running in the organization on day-to-day basis? So every CEO must ask for these things specifically, and unfortunately, in many of the decisions, I haven't seen this happening very vividly.
So what do you think is the key mindset shift that leaders in pharma need to make to unlock the real transformation potential?
Okay. First and foremost is, I think there has to be appreciation of the fact that technology is not the option today. It is inevitable part of any business and should be part of their core strategy, because regulators are demanding digital responses. Customers are also differentiating based on how well you have implemented technologies to run your operations. Paper is integral part of many companies today, and various people, based on how they look at this, have given me various versions of why people continue to use the paper, and one of them is convenience, and not in positive terms. But I believe the right software can help users avoid the mistakes for which paper is considered convenience. So if that is kept in mind, then paper, which is actually very risky for the pharmaceutical industry, can be avoided by the software and also will reduce huge amount of costs. Another important aspect is that, especially in India, the pharma industry is going at rapid pace, which also means that there is a huge demand of core pharma professionals. So obviously there is huge amount of attrition in many pharma companies. So more paper-based you are, more person dependent your processes are. With software, all that can go away. And I can give n number of examples now how that has been achieved in our client organizations by use of Samwed, where no knowledge is now person dependent. When there is a critical problem in the process, obviously that knowledge would come in play. But for regular operations, day-to-day operations, that person dependence is now gone. Next point is that software can not only help you achieve the compliance, but it can also help you achieve the competitiveness. And in fact, I have certain studies which have demonstrated that with software, 40% business upside is very, very possible. And I'll give you one example, because when softwares are implemented, various people don't pay attention to that. But when we are implementing the cleaning validation, which is part of our system validation module, we have demonstrated to the customer that they can improve the available capacity in the plant. Now, most of the people can't correlate those two.
Right.
It's very simple aspect. Our cleaning validation is integrated with regular cleaning operations, and we have devised certain processes and harmonized the processes, simplified the processes, organized the processes in such a way that this capacity can become available. That means if you are taking, say, 100 batches in a year, with this, you can now do, for example, 105 batches. So that's how the capacity becomes available, because you are using the software. With paper-based system, that is just not possible, right? So if the mindset is shifted, understanding that technology can be a very powerful tool for business upside, then everything will fall in place.
So now, from this experience of yours, what would you say was the real mindset change for a large organization implementation with 1,000 users across 4 locations around the globe?
Okay, so let's first understand the complexity of the problem. Okay, 4 locations or 5 locations with some of them acquired have come with very different cultural backgrounds. Everyone has their own process for the same thing, and now you need to bring them together, harmonize their processes, and rapidly deploy the application. So that happens only if there is the highest level of collaboration between our team and customer team. And that collaboration works in such a way that Samichinam team always become extended team of the customer team. Second important thing that happened was there was more than 100% commitment from CXOs. Everybody was committed, and it was just not delegated, but they were deeply involved and monitoring everything keenly because they knew this is going to help the business. Then, as I said, we don't believe in fixing the problems. We believe in solving the problems. That is our basic thought process. So we solved a process problem, made processes easier, and therefore, when we started discussing the configuration with the users and they gave us the processes and we said how harmonization is going to make everything simpler for them and obviously increase their standard of living in the organization, everybody started accepting those suggestions very easily and then started following them. Therefore, every configuration then started coming in place at lightning speed. This speed, solution approach, responsiveness increase everybody's confidence. Then it is just incremental shift that keeps on happening, and then everything is win, 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 and win.
So, in your experience, how do the audit fears, or CSV compliance become hurdles instead of enablers for the organization?
So, whenever there is an audit coming, and sometimes now FDA started surprise audits as well,
and frequency as well.
Right. So everybody gets anxious, especially the QA community, because they are the ones who are supposed to face the audit on behalf of organization and ensure that audit ends successfully. Now here the paper comes in picture where there are no software, and I keep on telling people paper is the nemesis of pharma industry because there is so much of paper, it is stashed somewhere else. You don't know which paper auditor will ask. You don't remember what was written on that paper. You don't remember what exactly had happened in what sequence during that day, which is recorded on that paper. So every QA manager or QA person who's facing the audit is continuously under pressure till audit gets completed. So I'm told that 40 to 60% days is the minimum effort required to face any paper-based audit. But in case of our clients, that entire effort has come down to 3.5 days, and that too with very high level of confidence, and confidence that my data is of higher quality and the integrity is not lost. Besides that, in Samwed especially, the audits happen on a single screen. So the consent process can be seen on the single screen in chronological order.
Right.
Every data that is required can be present on the same screen. So people can be sitting in the conference room and explain what has happened through the process one by one, right? And I'm happy to say and proud of software as well as people on the client side because they ensure the Samwed is used properly. And Samwed has gone through FDA, HMRA, TGA, Health Canada, and all audits have been successful. Now the second part is CSV. CSV has 3 parts, right? IQ, OQ, and PQ. For software provider, IQ and OQ are the important aspects. We have such a comprehensive OQ, and that too done automatically. When the software is deployed on customer servers, no auditor can have any opportunity to find any gap in those qualified reports.
Samwed's OQ.
Samwed OQ. So when my customers are facing audit, as I said earlier, the previous night they can get a sound sleep.
So we spoke about people. So can you tell me a story about Samichinam's human-first approach? That has helped in any of your clients, adaptation or implementation.
Sure. So after QMS, DMS and QMS, next module to be implemented was equipment care across all the locations. So we are talking about something like 8,800. So let's say approximately 8,900 equipment and instrument with their respective calibration, preventive maintenance, repair processes, plus logbooks associated with the locations as well as this equipment to be implemented. And we went live with all that data collection, data cleansing, and implementing and configuring Samwed in just 5 months. And the way this happened was every process was again looked at, harmonized, simplified. So as I mentioned earlier, Samwed is the only software which tells user what to do now,
right,
without bothering about what's going to happen next. So they can focus really well, right? So this feature called as smart logbooks, for example, it has been implemented in such a way that it's just not log entry. They are smart because they ensure that there is no inconsistency across the logbook entries. Every exception is handled, and all that becomes the input for building the data intelligence for my batch operations and cleaning operations as well. Another important thing we considered was that there was going to be some date on which people were to transition from paper to digital.
right.
But obviously for calibration, preventive maintenance, since there are cyclic processes dependent on what has happened in the past, that linkage has to be maintained. So we have some neat features in Samwed by which we captured that data, and it ensured that paper transition to digital transition happened without any hitch or without any disruption. Another important decision we took was, since most of these equipment are located in the closed rooms where the access is restricted, the environment is very hostile for PCs, we deployed mobiles and kiosks, and that application is also developed so well that our operators have literally fallen in love with those apps. Most important aspect is that those so-called operators who have lower level of education adapted to using those devices much better than supervisors, and in one of the plants actually operators trained the officers on the usage of these apps. And most importantly, in one of the recent audits, when the regulatory auditor demanded to look at that app, he was so appreciative of that app and the way it has been deployed and being used by our customer. That made my day.
So in this journey of transformation, what would you say are the 2-3 metrics to measure transformation success that you are proud of?
Okay, I'm going to give you 4. First of all, the transformation has to be business objective oriented. That is the bottom line. From that, these 4 matrices get driven. The first one is implementation timeline, because how long it takes to implement decides what is the rate of return of investment that you are getting. And it also depends upon the ease of adoption of the software by the users. So if you have shorter implementation timeline, that means you're going to get good ROI and you're going to have successful implementation. In case of majority of the software, users need to adapt themselves to the software. They have to change a lot. Whereas in case of Samwed adapts to users, processes and their working style, and therefore it becomes very, very easy to deploy. Second metrics is about level of standardization your organization can achieve using the software, because it directly proportional to cost of compliance as well as giving organization person independence. So I'll give you an example. When we implemented this approximately 8,900 equipment care module, the huge chunk was various types of balances. And across all these locations and across all the departments across these locations, virtually everyone had their own SOP because it is their departmental SOP. So we had to make an effort to bring all of them together and show them how they are really the same. And when they could get that, then we added certain other things which are the strengths of Samwed. That entire set of documents, there was something like 39 documents explaining the same thing, became one single document. This entire process become one single process. So regardless of whether it is a weighing scale or it's an analytical balance or any other balance, the same process now runs across the organization. Point is that because the Samwed, the way it is, we could achieve this level of standardization. Third one is whether your data quality has improved. So, which is obvious in terms of what is the effort now they require in audit preparation. From 45 to 60 days, 3.5 days is the testimony itself saying that their data quality has improved and they have confidence in their data quality. Not only that, there are a lot of business decisions, especially the production planning now depends upon the data that they get from the smart logbooks, because they now clearly know to the minute what is the time various processes are taking. And the last one and fourth one is whether there is a realization of lost opportunities because you have implemented the software. And again, I'll get back to the previous example I gave you of the cleaning validation. Nobody knew that they could actually gain more time for the production and reduce the time on cleaning by doing certain things which Samwed could allow them to do.
Any unexpected outcomes that have surprised you?
Oh yeah, there are many, but I think I'll name only two. First is, as I mentioned, Samwed being business engine, we started using terminology like task, procedures and parameters with the users. And some people, managers, they advised me that no, our people won't understand that. But like me, they were surprised when their shift supervisors and operators started talking to us and them in terms of task, procedures and parameters. Because it's a natural thing. They perform tasks, they perform procedures, they record parameters. And I think we got it right. And second most important thing that happened is the realization that they themselves had about something to be done for the improvement of the data quality. Obviously that became evident because Samwed was deployed and the way Samwed was handling exceptions and notifying people saying that these are the discrepancies in data. And now this client has taken master data management initiative to look at the entire data set that they have end to end and how to transform the entire data structures, their ownership across the organization, looking at horizon of 10 years. Because remember, they have already implemented SAP, and a lot of this data is part of SAP, and they probably didn't know what's going to happen 3 years down the line. And just in 3 years, they have stumbled upon this because of Samwed. So Samwed made them aware of importance of data quality and value it can bring in because of our implementation of smart logbooks and so on.
So we looked at the history of the journey that you have been through. But in the next 2-3 years, where do you see Samwed, and do you have any global aspirations?
Yes and yes. So we are going to add a lot of rich functionality to Samwed using generative AI, especially to improve compliance and reduce the review burden on the users. And second one is that we are working on certain features which are beyond the laboratory and plant operations and R&D, so that Samwed will encompass larger aspects of pharma industry. And yes, I think in US, Europe, and obviously everywhere else outside of India are all facing similar problems in adopting technology and following digital transformation. We have completed very successful implementation of Samwed for one of our clients in Netherlands. That gives us immense confidence that we will be able to solve problems of clients even outside of India very easily, the way we have been doing for our customers in India. So going global and helping larger community is obviously on the cards.
What do you think is work in progress for Indian pharma digital journey?
Interesting question. I think we need to appreciate the fact that Indian pharma is growing at unprecedented rate now. The competition is increasing. Skilled manpower shortage is evident. Attritions are evident. The technology penetration is very low in core operations, and therefore a lot of key fundamentals are not in place. Having said that, there is a clear and present need to leapfrog from paper to digital for every pharma company in India. Therefore, the CEOs of the pharma company need to figure out how they can engage the software companies with agility, proactive approach, expertise, and their track record to help turn their organization from paper to digital. And I believe with right focus and right tools and right software, any plant can be converted to digital plant in 18 to 24 months.
One last question. If you could whisper something to a pharma leader who are stuck in the paper panic, what would that be?
So there is still a huge section of pharma industry believes that they can still pull on with the paper. But the way industry is growing and the way the competition is growing and the way the young blood is coming in, if they don't transform themselves, appreciating technology is the only choice they have to transform the business. And if they don't do that, they'll soon find themselves lagging behind the rest of the leaders of the industry. And in 5 years' time, that opportunity would be completely lost, because as I had mentioned earlier, the technology can give you business upside of up to 40% definitely. And with the advent of newer technologies like AI, that can still go up, is what I believe. So let me see, I'll do it later is not going to work anymore. Besides, obviously, their employees on whom their business is dependent on, because it's a paper-based business, they're going to move to the better companies, those who are growing faster, those who are going to offer better remuneration. So the only choice they would have eventually is to probably close down. And obviously they want to avoid it. I'm not saying just for the sake of saying it, because it's getting demonstrated every day now. And in order to do that, they have to make digital technology core aspect of their growth strategy. And they have to embrace it with the clear understanding that whatever they do with the technology must help improving their top line and bottom line. And at the same time, they should not delegate it. They should embrace it themselves and get involved deeply. Otherwise, they are going to become paper dinosaurs.
So it was great talking to you today, and I really appreciate you spending time giving your insights. And thank you very much.
Feeling is mutual. Thank you.